Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie and I appreciate y'all stopping by. With Christmas just around the corner, I've got some amazing DIYs to share with you today. So in this video, I'll be showing y'all 6 creative and easy to make Christmas DIYs using wood that are sure to bring a touch of warmth and charm to your holiday decor. So let's grab some supplies and get started. Jumping right into DIY number 1. For this project, I used one of these wooden trees that I picked up for 50% off at Hobby Lobby and started by using apple barrel paint in the color Christmas green to give the tree one light coat so that the wood grain was still visible. Next, I used Waverly Antique Wax to stain the trunk of the tree. Then I used some Anita's acrylic paint in the color white and gave the base one light coat, again light enough so that the wood grain was still visible. While the paint was drying, I traced out the words "Days Until Christmas" onto some printer paper and colored the backside with a pencil to create a transfer. Once the paint was completely dry, I placed the words down one on each section of the tree and used some painter's tape to hold them in place. I then took a pen and traced the words to transfer them onto the tree. I know they're a bit hard to see on camera, but they do show up much better in person. I used this white metallic marker from the Dollar Tree to fill in the letters. Next, I took one of these wooden stars that I had in my stash and gave it one light coat of folk art enamel paint in the color gold ore, again letting the wood grain stay visible. After the paint was dry, I used hot glue to attach the star to the top of the tree. I then used these 2 wooden blocks from this craft kit that I picked up for 50% off at Hobby Lobby. I used some Anita's acrylic paint in the color white to lightly paint both of the blocks, again letting the wood grain show. I also went ahead and used the number stickers from this craft kit and used folk art enamel paint in gold ore to give them 3 good coats to tone down the glitter. Once the paint was completely dry, I placed one number sticker on each side of the wooden blocks. Then, to finish up this project, I set the numbered blocks on the base beneath the tree, and this one is finished. I am super happy with the way this one turned out, and I do tend to stick with a more woodland theme in my home for the holidays, and this fits in perfectly. Moving on to DIY number 2. For this project, I used the largest ring from this brass wreath ring set from the Dollar Tree and started by using a pair of wire cutters to cut the ring along the seam to open it. I then took some of these light and dark brown wooden beads that I had in my stash from a car seat cover and placed them onto the ring in the pattern of 2 light beads followed by a dark bead until I had the entire ring full. To attach the 2 ends of the ring back together, once I had all the beads in place, I added a large dab of hot glue inside the last bead and placed the other end of the ring inside and held it until the glue set up. Next, I used 2 of the bells from this bell pick that I got for 50% off at Hobby Lobby. I added a long piece of the jute to the top of each of the bells by placing both ends of the jute through the hole on the top of the bell and then feeding the ends of the jute back through the loop and pulled it tight. I then secured the jute in place by tying a knot on the top of the bell, and I did repeat this step for both of the bells. Once I had the jute on both bells, I went ahead and tied the 2 bells together, placing one of the bells higher than the other, then cut off all but the top 2 pieces of the jute. Next, I tied the bells onto the top of the wreath in a double knot, right where I glued the 2 pieces of the ring back together. After I had the bells attached, I went ahead and tied some of the extra jute into a hanger and cut off the remainder. To decorate the wreath, I used these 2 floral picks from Walmart. Using a pair of wire cutters, I cut off the excess stems right under the pine cones and then used a generous amount of hot glue to attach them to the top of the wreath right underneath the hanger facing in opposite directions. Then, to finish up this wreath, I simply arranged the pine cones to cover up where the picks were cut and the bells were tied, and this one is done. I really love the simplicity of this wreath, and I think the 2-tone color of the beads along with the golden bells gives it a nice rustic look. Now on to DIY number 3. For this project, I used one of these 16 by 20 inch blank canvases from the plus section at the Dollar Tree and started by flipping the canvas over and very carefully used a flathead screwdriver and a pair of pliers to remove the staples so that I could remove the canvas from the frame. Once I had the canvas removed, I noticed that there was a staple in each of the 4 corners on the front, so I went ahead and removed those as well. Since I removed the front staples, the frame was a bit weak, so I flipped it over and took a stapler and added 1 staple to each of the 4 corners on the back to help firm it up. Next, I used some Krylon Chalky Finish antiquing wax in the color Dark Vintage to stain the entire frame front and back. While the frame was drying, I cut a piece of foam board from the Dollar Tree to fit the frame. Once the frame was dry, I placed a piece of foam board on the back and stapled it to the frame. Now I used staples because I had them on hand, but you could also use hot glue to attach it to the frame. I went ahead and traced out the phrase, "Meet me under the mistletoe" from my computer onto some printer paper in the size that would fit the sign and colored in the back side with a pencil to create a transfer. I placed it on the front of the sign a little ways up from the bottom in the center and used some painter's tape to hold it in place, and then took a pen and traced the words to transfer them onto the foam board, being careful not to apply too much pressure and puncture the foam. Once I had the words transferred, I took an ultra-fine tip black Sharpie and carefully filled in the letters. Next, I took one of these gold eye hooks that I had in my stash and placed it in the inside ledge of the frame at the top in the middle. I then used this mistletoe pick that I picked up on Amazon in a 2-pack, and I will have these linked below. I removed the bow and then attached the piece of jute that came with the mistletoe to the top by feeding the ends through the loop and then back through itself. Once I had the jute attached, I fed one end of the jute through the eye hook, and when I was happy with the length at which the mistletoe was hanging, tied it in a knot and cut off the excess jute. I made a simple shoestring bow using some 4-ply jute and used hot glue to attach it to the mistletoe where I had removed the original bow. And then to finish up this sign, and because I'm a little bit extra, I went ahead and used the same antiquing wax I used for the frame to stain the edges and the back of the foam board for a nice finished look. Y'all, I love the beauty and simplicity of this sign, and I can't wait to add it to my mantle this holiday season. Today's video is part of the Everything Merry playlist hosted by Amanda from 6 Kids and a Glue Gun and Katie from Lady Red Crafting, along with their special guest host this month, Rebecca from Rebecca Virginia DIY. So if you're looking for some more holiday crafting inspiration, be sure to check out the playlist that I will have linked in the description box below. Also, please don't forget to head over to Katie, Amanda, and Rebecca's channels and show them some love. I'll have their channels linked below as well. With that said, let's move on to DIY number 4. For this project, I used another one of these 16 by 20 inch canvases from the Dollar Tree and removed the canvas. I then used Waverly Antique Wax to stain the entire frame front and back. Next, I flipped the canvas material over so that I was working with the more fabric feeling side and used Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster to give it one good solid coat. Once everything was completely dry, I set the frame back on top of the canvas with the side I painted facing upwards. I then flipped the whole thing over and, pulling the canvas material as tight as possible, reattached it to the frame using staples. Again, I used staples, but you could use hot glue if you wanted to. After I had the canvas attached to the frame, I took a sharp utility knife and trimmed off all the excess canvas that was hanging over the edges of the frame. Next, I used the last 2 bells from this pick from Hobby Lobby and tied a piece of 4-ply jute to the top of each bell in a double knot and added a dab of hot glue for added security. I also used one of these 12-inch Christmas wreaths that I picked up for 50% off at Hobby Lobby. I found what part of the wreath that I wanted to be the top and tied the 2 bells onto the wreath with a double knot so that they were hanging at different heights and cut off the excess jute. To finish up the wreath, I tied a simple shoestring bow using some 6-ply jute and attached it to the top of the wreath using hot glue to cover up where the bells were tied on. Then, to finish up this project, I turned the canvas sideways and placed the wreath in the center and used a generous amount of hot glue to secure it in place, and this one is finished. I absolutely love this sign. I think it turned out beautiful and looks amazing paired with the mistletoe sign on my mantle. Moving on to DIY number 5. For this project, I used this 12-inch bamboo ring from this multi-pack that I picked up on Amazon, and I will have these linked in the description box below, as well as one of these little black bear ornaments from this pack that I picked up for 50% off at Hobby Lobby. I started by cutting the hanger off of the bear and then used a generous amount of hot glue to attach it to the bottom of the bamboo ring. Next, I used 2 of these bottle brush trees from the Dollar Tree. I used some wire cutters to cut the stand off of the tree, getting as close to the bottom of the tree as possible, and then used hot glue to attach it to the ring right in front of the bear. I did go ahead and reinforce the tree by adding a little more hot glue around the base once it was attached. I then repeated these steps to attach the other tree to the ring just a little ways behind the bear. Next, I used one of these bottle brush trees from the Dollar Tree and used wire cutters to remove it from the stand, again getting as close to the bottom of the tree as possible. I then took the wire cutters and cut the tree into 3 smaller trees using the sections in the tree as a guide on where to cut. Once I had all the pieces cut, I went back with some scissors and trimmed up each piece to look more like individual mini trees. When I was happy with the shape of the trees, I took the largest of the trees and used hot glue to attach it to the ring right behind the tree to the right of the bear. I then used hot glue to attach the smallest tree with all the snow right behind the bear to fill in the gap. Next, I used 4 of these wooden snowflakes that I got in this variety pack that I picked up on sale at Hobby Lobby. It's hard to see here, but I tied a piece of clear fishing line to the top of each of the snowflakes with a double knot and cut off any excess line. Once I had the fishing line tied to the snowflake, I tied it to the top of the bamboo ring in a double knot so that it looked like snow was falling from the sky. I then repeated this step to attach 3 more of the snowflakes to the ring, spacing them out and hanging them at different heights to add a little more interest to this piece. Once I had all the snowflakes attached to the ring, I went back and added a small dab of hot glue underneath the top of the ring to each of the snowflake lines for added security. To create a hanger for this piece, I used one of these small silver eye hooks that I had in my stash and screwed it in the top of the bamboo ring, getting it as close to centered as possible. I then took a piece of jute and fed both ends through the eye hook and back through itself to attach it, and then tied a knot at the top and cut off the excess jute, and this project is finished. This turned out absolutely adorable, y'all. It can be used as a door wreath, or it can even be hung from a ceiling hook for cute room decor. And last but not least, DIY number 6. For this project, I used 2 of these wood pieces from this wood economy bag that I picked up on sale at Hobby Lobby. I kept one of the pieces at 9 inches long and cut the other piece into a 6-inch and 3-inch piece. I then used Waverly Antique Wax to stain all 3 wood pieces. Once the wax was dry, I used Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and heavily dry brushed all the pieces front and back. Next, I used 3 of these number 0 hardwood biscuits that I had on hand, but you can get them at just about any home improvement store. I used a finger sander to sand one end of the biscuit flat, then to shape the sides and top to resemble a candle flame, and to remove the pattern and number on the front and back. I repeated this step to shape the other 2 wood biscuits as well. You could also cut a flame shape out of some foam board if you don't want to use the wooden biscuits. After I had the flames prepped, I used some folk art brushed metal paint in the color brushed gold to paint the front and back of all 3 flames. Once all the paint was completely dry, I used hot glue to attach one of the wooden flames to the top of each of the 3 wooden candles, placing them as close to the center as possible. To make a base for the candles, I took one of these long wooden planks from this pack from the Dollar Tree and used Waverly Antique Wax to stain it front, back, and sides. After the stain was dry, I arranged the candles onto the plank the way I wanted them and used hot glue to secure them in place. I started with the largest candle and placed it at the back of the arrangement, then placed the mid-sized candle in front of it, overlapping just a little, and I did add a little hot glue along the side of the candle where it was going to be in contact with the large candle. I then placed the smallest candle out front to the left of the middle candle, again using hot glue on the back edge and bottom to secure it in place. Next, I made 3 simple shoestring bows with some jute and used hot glue to attach one to the front of each of the 3 candles at the top. I then took 6 of these silver bells from this pack that I got on sale at Hobby Lobby and used apple barrel paint in the color brown oxide to give them one light coat. Once the paint was dry, I took some Mod Podge and applied it to the bottom of the bell and sprinkled some cinnamon on top, making sure that it was completely coated, and added another layer of Mod Podge on top to seal it in place. I then repeated this step to cover the top of the bell as well as the other 5 bells and set them aside to dry for about an hour. Here is how these rusty bells turned out. I am super happy with the results and they smell so good. To finish up this project, I placed one of the bells on each one of the bow tails, securing them with a knot and cutting off the excess jute. Now, I wasn't really happy with the way that the bells were hanging, so I left a little bit of jute from the tail and used a dab of hot glue to attach it to the jute above the bell, and this helped the bells to hang straight. I also made sure when tying on the bells that they were hanging at different heights for added interest. Y'all, this set of wooden candles turned out super cute. I have to say that this is hands down my favorite project out of today's video. And that's a wrap on all of today's projects. I hope y'all enjoyed watching and got some inspiration for your own holiday decor. Let me know down in the comments below which one of these projects is your favorite. And also, please be sure to check out the Everything Merry playlist as well as today's host for more holiday crafting inspiration. All of those links will be in the description box below. I want to thank each and every one of you for stopping by, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up as it really does help me out here on YouTube. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, what are you waiting for? Click that button and stick around for a little while. I have tons of fun projects on the way. I'll see y'all next time.